Hello, and welcome back to another week of the DP World Tour picks and bets. Skylar Hoke here, joined by Tom Jacobs. And the first thing I have to say, Tom, is thank you very much because you gave me a nice, gentle shove after a month of backing Darius Van Driel and said, "Are you sure you want to leave him off your card?" At what we're deeming a perfect course fit. And wouldn't you know, the last man standing was Darius Van Driel, hit at 90 to 1. So thank you very much, my friend.
You're welcome. Well, the strangest thing is I didn't follow my own advice. Like I picked up from what you said about how perfect it would be for him in the coming weeks, reminded you of that fact, and then just decided to go on this Sebastian Garcia train, who, by the way, actually hit the ball really nicely off the tee for the first two rounds and was just terrible overall. But yeah, it wasn't a good week for me. But for you, Van Drill, really happy. Good for the show. Back-to-back winners now, obviously, with Hoshino and then Van Drill. Um, Whether we can find a three in a row at the SDC Championship is definitely up for debate. I think it's one of I would say, Sky, this is a spoiler alert for anyone that's listening now, probably the least confident I've ever been of a DP World Tour event, maybe in the last 6 months or so at least. Which maybe that just means that we'll find the right person. But yeah, it's just been a tough one, Sky. Like it's a difficult course because we've only got the 1 year of real DP World Tour and do well. And he did miss the cut here last year, which, is always a little bit off-putting. But I just think in terms of accuracy, this is a guy that's 6th on tour in terms of driving accuracy. He's a player that has got a ton of pedigree, as we know. And I just think for Otaegui, it's a field that he should take absolute advantage of. He was 11th in strokes gained approach last week. That's always promising to see. 13th in tee to green. And look, he's not the longest guy. I mean, he's one of the shortest actually in terms of driving distance. And I would love to couple both distance and accuracy up, but that kind of profile is reserved for the kind of 18 and 21 picks, right? So I think for me, it's get that accuracy type on board, someone that I know that can win, someone that's played some good golf in courses or in events where you'd kind of like to link it to in the Scottish Championship. Great, you're going to get a little bit of wind there, and some kind of faux links, situations there. English Championship, he was 2nd in that. And he's played well in South Africa. He was 2nd in the Alfred Dunhill Championship in the past. So Shwani Open, he was 6th. He's been there or thereabouts in South Africa in the past. And I think that really was promising, on top of the fact that obviously he played so well last week. So slight pause on the fact that he obviously missed the cut last year, but I'm not going to get too hung up on that. I think we've seen it so many times in the past now. And actually, when you look at his form kind of coming in, he finished 30th at the Kenya Open before missing the cut here last year. Then he missed the cut the week after, and actually going into that kind of form, he started really slowly. And I think that's kind of a pattern of his career, really. Like, he slow starts and then kind of kicks on the middle part of the year. So I'm kind of confident that he can come and bounce back and do well this time around.
Yeah. I mean, I love rooting for him, right? I mean, just a golfer who's fun to watch, fun to battle at a ballpark that is overpowered or can be. It's definitely not his game. So thinking it's going along these lines definitely should hopefully suit for him this year. For me, I'm still deeper. I'd like you to go next with what even could be a pair of brothers in the mid-range here. One, and actually both played exceptional last week. Right. So are these guys carrying this over into this week?
Yeah. So I've gone with Nacho Elvira at 55 to 1. Manuel is 55 to 1 as well. Manuel Elvira was the 54-hole leader with Darius Mandrill last week and did kind of fade away a little bit. Nacho was cheering him on to kind of get his best finish on the DP World Tour so far, and he did. I've just slightly leaned with Nacho on the basis that I think if this was what I thought it was last year, and it was this kind of big driving golf course where you need a bit more power, then I would have gone with Nacho. But I think he will actually benefit from the shorter, well, not the shorter, but the kind of accuracy test. Now, again, actually, Manuel's far ahead of Nacho so far in terms of driving accuracy stats for the season. But I just think that he will find that Nacho in time. And you look at how he finished the tournament last week. He was excellent. He's 16th after both for the first 2 rounds, then went into the weekend 6th after 54 holes, 2nd going into the final there. He was 13th at the Qatar Masters, again, nice wind affected golf course, 16th at the Ras Al Khaimah, 45 and 28th in Dubai, where it wouldn't necessarily suit his game. I think Nacho has shown a lot in the last few weeks. So as someone that is a winner on the DP World Tour, albeit once, this is a guy that's lost 3 times in playoffs as well. So he's definitely got something to kind of look at. When you think about that win, where he's won, it was Celtic Manor, Linksy at the start of the course, and kind of pans out into a normal course later on. He's also got top 10 at the Alfred Dunhill Links, so he's got that. He was top 25 here last year. He's got that over his brother, who obviously didn't play as well. So, yeah, I think for me, how well he's played in kind of South Africa in the past, how well he's played here in the past, how well he's playing overall, I think Nacho Elvira represents decent value at 55 to 1.
Yeah. It's fun to see both the duo. Manuel, I mean, stepped up immediately upon getting on the tour, right? He's somebody who I guess both really could have had it for the taking. Like, Vandriel played well and confident, but man, there was definitely opportunities across the board for others to kind of take it. And Nacho has that type of history in it. Somebody that I was very sad, I guess, that did not play last week, but I do not want to give up early on again after we saw an outstanding performance up against your boy Hoshino the week before. But, Ugo Kusad is just, I think, firing on all cylinders. It's a golfer who I believe we kind of leaned a little bit more into the distance angle when I first kind of came upon him at the Hero. He popped on the radar a little bit with an early good round, and then basically improving upon his performances week after week. I wouldn't say he's a bomber. I wouldn't say he's the most accurate, but multiple times he has gained off of the tee. And what he does have is a stellar short game, a very good putter so far this year. Has played well in South Africa, 15th at that Alfred Dunhill Championship at Leopard Creek for him earlier on in the year. I mean, if you looked at some of his previous performances, I think the sky's the limit still for Ugo Kusad at this stage of the DP World Tour, right? He's a 31-year-old, somewhat of a journeyman in that manner of really looking for that first true breakthrough. And what we've seen for a month now just leaves me wanting to continue to go back to him, even though it may not play into the hands of which that month of golf did when it was driver heavy. I like him a lot this week.
Yeah, I think Ugo Kusad and Manuel Elvira are very similar, right? They're both at different later stages of their career without ever actually playing at this level before. It's taken Manuel Elvira a long time to get here as well, and Manuel Elvira has been a 36-hole leader and a 54-hole leader in his last 4 starts. Obviously, Ugo Kusad, as you said, went blow for blow with Hoshino for a long time, and at one point looked like he was going to pip him, right? So I do think that. Yeah, I think that he shows every signs of being able to compete. I think that seems pretty similar to Manuel Elvira in terms of they both come off the Challenge Tour. I don't think either of them won on the Challenge Tour, right? So it's not like they've got through in that way and we expect them to produce fireworks. I think they've just been very solid with their start out. So yeah, I've been impressed with both of them, and yeah, it seems pretty good. So I think Elvira is slightly younger. He's I think 27, 28, but still it's taken him a decent amount of time to get here, whereas Kusad is, that little bit longer. But yeah, we've seen him in recent weeks. Nevis Van Driel, he was 30 odd and gets his first win right after never really showing signs of being able to win. So yeah, I think we're picking the right kind of profiles of players. It's just going to be which ones turn up this week, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when looking at it, again, it's difficult to really parse through. I think at this stage of the DP World Tour, stage of co-sanctioned events, and maybe I'll go on my tangent now because we've always historically been super high proponents of the co-sanctioned events because it brings more opportunity for us. But this is the first time I think I've got a little bone to pick. And it's kind of because it goes into somebody that I'm looking at selecting here and probably will, and I'm struggling finding stats, and I kind of get into this tangent of looking into status and looking who gets into this and that. The guy that I've been super keen on who played really well last week, Nicolo Galletti, finishing T11th. I'm thinking, man, I just counting down the seconds until we get another opportunity to bet on him, truthfully, because I think so highly of his game, plays well last week, comes to a course. We talked about accuracy mattering, and where is he, right? Where is he on the list of golfers and getting this event? And unfortunately for the Q School guys, and Galetti's not alone, Joe Dean, who played better than Galletti, finished his second, is not here either because the top 10 exemptions are no longer in play on a co-sanctioned event. So Dean and Galletti are left on the sidelines when we have multiple South Africa events here co-sanctioned. Challenge Tour isn't up and running. And Challenge Tour, when it comes back, is co-sanctioned with the PGA Tour of India. So I don't even really know if those guys can just pop down as easily or fly over there to play too in those type of events. So I just feel bad for those guys in which they can't continue any momentum. It's got to be a frustrating time. And I know it's frustrating for the Korn Ferry grads on the PGA Tour who aren't getting starts either. And you got to play well when you get it. And then when you play well, I don't even know when the next reshuffle is in the DP World Tour. So long way of saying, if for some reason Nicolo Galletti shows up on an odds board, I'm betting him, but he's not getting into this event, which is sad.
I was sitting there thinking as well, Skylar, and look, I'm done with the kind of live versus PGA debate, right? But it's going to lean into that slightly. Greg Norman was this big proponent all these years ago of kind of like having a more global tour, right? And we wanted to bring all these players together. And it's basically because he was an Australian that felt a bit outcast by the Americans. That's generally how that went. But I do think a byproduct of Live being introduced has actually brought a global game closer together in the sense that we're seeing more Europeans populate these PJ Tour leaderboards. Of course, they got 10 cards this year, which was the first thing that we've seen for a while. But what that's done is Matty Pavon's gone and won a Torrey Pines. Sammy Vanamaki had a great chance to win yesterday, probably should have done. Now, I'm not going to count Stephen Yeager in his argument because he's effectively American, I think, at this point. But Robert McIntyre was tied sixth. Eric Van Rooyen is someone that was playing DP World Tour stuff for a long time. Jorge Campillo is inside the top 20. I thought that was miraculous. I didn't think that course was great for him at all last week. So you're seeing what these guys are doing with some opportunities. I mean, we've seen it with Matt Wallace in recent years as well. I do think it's important to focus on the fact that we're getting closer in terms of bringing the DP World Tour and the PJ Tour closer together. But what we're not doing, Sky, is your point, is we're not bringing those guys that are now reaching this level and getting them to the springboard kind of stops. We've kind of gone, okay, well, it's a great thing that these DP World Tour players are getting closer to the PJ Tour through good play, but we're not letting the guys that have actually earned spots onto the DP World Tour in limited capacity to play every week and kind of springboard, as you just said with Galetti there as a good example. So I do think there's, for every step forward, there seems to be one step back. It's not as dramatic as one step forward, two steps back, but a couple of own goals scored by probably both tours at this point, especially with the Corn Ferry. I mean, look what Jay Knapp did yesterday. I mean, right. It was brutal for us, right? But like, he was playing Corn Ferry Tour off limited status. Like, I think he only played like 14 events, right? Like, he didn't play a lot. He was a bouncer for a couple of 6 months, whatever it was, because he basically had no way of playing. And then he goes and wins on a PJ Tour, and what are we doing if we're avoiding these kind of stories? And PJ Tour could not have been more into his story for the 4 days that he was in contention. They flooded socials with it. It was a great story. We saw the interviews with his grandfather and things like that. These are stories that can be found if we do it properly. And what's the opportunity cost of putting Niccolo Galetti in this field in the SDC Championship? I mean, there isn't one, is there? So I don't really understand why we're leaving those out.
Yeah, 100%. And what's smart is another golfer in this field, James Nicholas, who we've talked about a lot. He parlayed that Instagram like stardom and fandom into sponsors exemptions. He's into the next two events because of sponsors exemptions. So genius by him, kind of playing that angle. I'd assume that's part of the angle, right? Like a name like him getting that, and why he's into the event. Super smart, because man, if there's not that many opportunities, you need to take advantage to now regain. And what's important is being that top 125 or 120 for next year, right? And you keep recycling into these events. So crucial for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the system needs to be clearer. It's as simple as that. Like, make the system clearer, make it smoother, make it attainable for these guys that have worked their way onto, through qualifying and things like that, and played so well in the recent weeks to get in and play. And we'll be good. One player I thought about, Sky. I don't know if you can remember. Why have we not seen Dan Bradbury for a while?
I don't know. I see him all over my Instagram. So he's playing. He's healthy.
Has he played an event recently and I've just missed it, or
I mean, he missed a bunch of cuts in a row, I think, when we kind of saw him ranging into the 50s. I mean, he's now, last time we saw him, Byron, he played. So
okay, so it's not that long ago. I just figured we'd see him in kind of like Qatar and Kenya and all those sort of places, and we haven't seen him. Maybe he's just taking some time off to figure out his game. So nothing disastrous there then for Dan Bradbury.
No. I guess long-winded, and I probably skipped over this, but he's as long as 66, and the each way, which I'll probably land on, is actually 50 for Ryan Van Velzen. If we talked about golfers who have kind of contended on their leaps over, Van Velzen did that right away when he played at the South African Open, losing out to Burmeister in that event. I believe he was final group, if not one of the last going off. Shot a Sunday 73 when kind of Dean took control with a really, really good weekend and won that event. But what Van Velzen then went out on the Sunshine Tour, he won. And then in the co-sanctioned Challenge Tour events, he was second, and then he missed cut at the Dimension Data Pro-Am, which I vividly remember, it was 2 weeks ago, but I remember our friend Jason halfway house tweeting, being frustrated that we missed out on Rivetto at a driver heavy type of course. And then we see Van Velzen come to Kenya the next week and be in the mix, finishing 11th after kind of a subpar Sunday, for him. I mean, he shot 71. Again, that event, I mean, Vandriel played great, right? 67 to close out, win by 2. But somebody could have taken that by storm a little bit with a really low one, like Otaegui had on Sunday from the thick of it. And Van Velzen has put himself now in that spot twice in 4 starts in the DP World Tour. I feel confident in him. His game is a little bit more set up. If we look at what we think is the statistics from the Sunshine Tour, 2 of the 3, which has given him statistics for accuracy, show him to be one of the more accurate golfers on the Sunshine Tour. So I like him in this spot here, even at the shorter odds of 50 with the each way.
Yeah, I think, look, if we're looking for a South African who regularly plays the Sunshine Tour and someone that can get in the mix, I think it's Van Velzen. Like, I think that formula is simple, right? Like, I think he's the guy that's playing incredibly well. He did play so well here when it was just a regular Sunshine Tour event, and then when he came here last year, missed the cut. But I think he hadn't played it well, and then he finished third, at the South African Championship, the most recent start. So whether he's figured something out about the golf course since then, whether he's just a massively improved player, Sky, since the first 3 times he played the golf course, we shall see. But I think at the end of the day, the stock and the value is in Van Velzen as someone that's playing really well and should be comfortable at home.
Yeah, that's kind of the lean there, because normally I lean into that. I mean, he's basically the best Challenge Tour player right now. So, or best Sunshine Tour player right now. And let's see, you are next again.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Daniel Brown, who, when we think about Daniel Brown from last year, he was kind of all in on that kind of strong driving, a little bit in the same mold of Dan Bradbury, right? He would hit some, strong. That's why I mentioned kind of Dan Bradbury off the top there. Hitting, good accurate drives. I think he was inside the top 10 for driving accuracy by the end of the year. And what he did is he played well in South Africa, and namely at this golf course where he was 9th. He was actually 3rd going into the final day. He should have finished 3rd, had a meltdown over the last few holes. But he won the ISPS Hander last year. He was 3rd in Mauritius at the end of last year, 7th at the Barbasol on the PGA Tour. So those are his 3 kind of standout things. You go back into 2022, he was 5th in the South African Open Championship. As I said already, 9th here. Czech Masters driver heavy, 14th there. Johnson Workwear Open, again, South Africa, 17th. Joburg Open, 17th. He played a lot of good stuff in South Africa in a short period of time. Hasn't played well so far this season, Sky. But I think that's why we're getting, pretty fancy prices about someone who, as I said just there, had finished, the year 17th and 3rd. First in the Joburg Open, then 3rd at the Mauritius Open. So does it concern me that he's been 43rd miscut, 76th and 61st in his 4 starts so far in 2024? Sorry, of course it does. But he was actually 14th after round 1 at the Qatar Masters. Drove it pretty well there by all accounts, and he now comes to an event that he's played well. So returning to South Africa, we do see these repeat performers in this part of the country, part of the world, sorry. And yeah, I think for me, Daniel Brown is a player that is better than what he's showing so far. And if his last season is anything to go by, this is a period of time where he should play better again.
Yeah. Yep. I can agree with that. I go right to, and I guess I'll go in parallel because of the preview Ben Cooley had just talked about. And he talked about Daniel Brown and Todd Clements side by side after they won back-to-back last year in their events. And I'm siding with Clements. If you look at, he's 110 to 1 as the longest odds, 90s with the each way. Clements, last year, that victory for him was completely out of nowhere, right? Not a single top 20 finish until that Czech Masters for him, which he played against the best golfers, Matt Wallace, Nikolai Højgaard, Bob McIntyre, Valimaki, Ludwig Aberg, Yannick Paul, we're all in that top 10 in which he competes and wins at Albatross Golf Resort. And, for him to do that at the long odds that he was out of nowhere was insanely shocking in a lot of ways. And what he did it was great iron play, and that's beginning to come back. We saw him, I think he was first, if not first, he was inside the top 5 in irons last week, was the most accurate he has been in a while. I think that's the fear with him. off the tee can get wayward. It's not long for him, but if those irons fire like they have, he's now made 6 cuts in a row dating back to October. Just a lot to like for me, with the upside of somebody who was extremely talented. That as an amateur, kind of his career was talked about quite a bit. So for him, who just really hasn't kicked on in that manner since that victory, I'm hoping this can be the spot for Todd Clements again.
Yeah, look, back-to-back top 25 finishes of Raz Al Khaimah and the Qatar Masters in his last 2 starts. He's obviously impressive enough, right? And there's not a lot. So I envision Todd Clements as this bigger hitter, and not
really. So not. Yeah,
it's one of those things that, like, when I think about Todd Clements, I think, oh, he's won the Czech Masters, he's won the Irish Challenge, he must have just bashed it around and done it that way, and that isn't necessarily the case. And this is one of those things that have been caught out in the past. Like, if you don't deep dive all these types of players, and the one thing I would definitely urge people to do more often is you can kind of get in your head that certain. I mean, I for a long time thought Tristan Lawrence was a reasonably good hitter, or Van Tonder. I can't remember which way around. I always get it wrong. And then Louis Diego is a massive hitter, and it's just like you need to actually continue to remind yourself that the profile of these players is right there in front of you in tour tips and data golf and everything. It reminds you of the profile of the player, and because you can just there could be a bias in your head where he might have hit it long one week, or he might perform well on a long golf course, and you think, oh, he must be a long hitter. It doesn't kind of work out that way. So that's from personal experience. I would go back and look at why a player's good, and as you say there, Todd Clements great in approach last time out of the Qatar Masters, and actually it was just his short game to let him down, which has actually been the theme of 2024, right? You could, there was 2 big approach weeks in the Dubai Invitational and the Qatar Masters, and he gained in and off the tee in 2 of those as well. So yeah, I think keep an eye on Clements, knowing what we know about him overall.
Yep. So I'm excited for him overall here this week. I know you go next. I wanted to double check because I'm adding somebody here, Tom, that we had not discussed really at all prior. And it's specifically, I guess it's due a little bit to what we saw last week out of him. Yep. But he was brought up on the podcast as a ricochet shot in some ways last week when I was searching for the last PGA Tour made cut. And we mentioned his golfer in passing, Schwab, right? Matthias Schwab. So when I dream of a Schwab course, I guess I'll ask the question to you. What do you dream of a Matthias Schwab course?
I thought Matthias Schwab, when he went over, and I think I did this, he got onto the PGA Tour, right, and played some stuff. And I thought he'd be great at Copperhead for the Valspar Championship. And He wasn't. That was what I think of Matthias Schwab as. So that's the kind of profile of what I think he is.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I guess in the way of what I'm looking for is a course that's not overpowered, right? A course that is won by accuracy or won by just good ball striking, right? I think that's kind of something where Matthias has kind of excelled at. I mean, if you go back year over year for Schwab, his best events, 2021, Wentworth, the Boise Open, which was won by Grayson Sigg, Aaron Rai at the top of the leaderboard there. Omega Dubai, another event that is not going to be overpowered. Paul Casey winning that year that he played well. 2022, a Honda Classic, a course that we see this week that demands at least keeping it in play off the tee and rewarding. RSM, John Deere. You go even to last year, which was as bad of a year that Matthias Schwab really has had. His 4 best performances, Worldwide Technology, which, a Henley and a Harmon win, a Fortinet, which is a little bit more open. Thigala won that event, but Cole, Todd in the leaderboard there. Punta Cana, another one. American Express, top 4 for events for him there. And where does he kind of resurface, I guess, a little bit last week is he leads the field in strokes gained approach, the Magical Kenya Open. 23rd, right? And just, I guess, on the surface, if I find someone finishing 23rd after the history of what we've seen out of Schwab, I normally don't bat an eye as much as I do. But last time out in South Africa, he was 11th at the Alfred Dunhill Championship. He has not missed a cut. This is what I was looking at. He has not missed a cut in South Africa in his life. He 29th, 41st, 13th, 14th, 52nd, and 11th for him 5 times out in South Africa. I guess I'm betting on the old Schwab to show up after what it was maybe a 4-round flash, but 110-1, he was the one that kind of, I was debating between him and Gearbosch, truthfully, as the final ad there. And I guess I'm hard pressed to not give the benefit of the doubt to Schwab at a little bit shorter of a number of what we know of him.
Yeah, look, I think what Schwab was before he went and did the PGA Tour was a player that we felt pretty comfortable was going to make a breakthrough, right? And didn't transpire. He didn't go and do anything really over on the stateside, but I didn't expect him to. As we kind of alluded to there, it's not a player that we thought would go and, suddenly do what, I don't know, Matthew Bavon's done or anything like that. I mean, he hasn't won yet. He lost in the playoff, didn't he, to Till Hatton and Kitayama and all those at Turkish Airlines Open. I really liked Matthias Schwab before he went off, and I think he just disrupted his career, and it doesn't work out for everybody when they go back over to the PGA Tour, or go to the PGA Tour for the first time, should I say? And yeah, like, you can't blame them for trying to go and do it. That's exactly what they need to do. It's the pinnacle of the tours, right, and what they need. But now he's back playing a little bit more regularly over here. I think he'll benefit from it. I mean, he was 11th for the Alfred Dunhill, and as I pointed out, he's got a great record in South Africa. He then finishes 23rd in Kenya. And you can't sit there and go, look, 4 missed cuts don't mean anything. But if you're just not a player that succeeds in the Middle East, you're not a player that succeeds in the Middle East. Like, there is a certain part of that. It's kind of a little bit why I'm forgiving Daniel Brown. I think that he can go on and do really well now that we're getting to South Africa, where he's showed some life. And I do think there's value in finding those players that have really felt comfortable in this part of the world, and just get back to that. So,
Yep.
I'm happy to do that.
Yep. So that's kind of the reach, I think, in some ways. I mean, the next 2 golfers probably aren't as familiar for some too, who aren't deep into the weeds of us. I'll let you go, even though one of them's a little bit shorter than yours. You can go ahead with your final selection.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with David Rivetto, who you mentioned earlier. And I do think it's just one of those ones where, again, I think of David Rivetto as this big hitter, not necessarily very accurate, but he's actually inside the top 20 at the moment. I think that will kind of peter out, and he'll end up kind of 50th or 60th maybe by the end of the season. But he hits it, long, and he's top 5 in distance this season, and he's hitting it pretty accurately right now compared to his peers, which is all I'm kind of looking for. And, he dropped back down to the Challenge Tour, wins in South Africa, which I think is important. He was 18th here last year. He was leading after round 1. He was actually inside the top 10 after 54 holes as well. So, yes, he did struggle in Kenya last week. He wasn't great following that win. But yeah, just before the end of 2023, Rivetto was 17th in the South African Open Championship, or South African Championship, sorry, and inside the top 6 for the first 3 rounds there as well. So I do think that kind of form of, again, we talk about Sky, you just mentioned Schwab there and how well he's played in South Africa. Rivetto is now won in South Africa, albeit at a lower level. Whatever reason, he loves this part of the world. I think what it is, guys, I think there's a certain level of friendliness. One, they are a little bit of throwbacks in terms of courses over there, and you get a nice kind of break from just having to bash it everywhere. But 2, the fields are generally a little bit weaker, so maybe they get a chance to kind of develop their game and not feel so intimidated when it's more of a Rolex Series event or a Middle East event where the prize pools are a little bit bigger. So it could just, fundamentally be that. But there's also players that do just love. I remember speaking to Toby Tree in the past, and he used to sort of go out and stay in South Africa, right? And, had friends and family over there that kind of put him up. So there's definitely people that kind of base their season, I guess, around performing well at the tail end of the season and the start of the season in South Africa. And I think Rivetto is one of those. So, as I say, recent win in South Africa, driving it well, played well here last year, led after round 1, inside the top 10 after 54 holes. I think Rivetto can kind of build on that confidence he had with the win and the performance here last year. And 125-1, I'm willing to take a chance that he finds himself in the mix again for the second time in 3 starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I teed it up for you to go there, because I am going with the winner on the Challenge Tour last week. So Rivetto wins, and then Bjorn Akesson wins. Yep. And we've mentioned Ben, obviously good friend Coley. Tipped him at 100-1 last week to win on the Challenge Tour. Ben, as well as others, have gotten a little bit lucky. I am myself too, with 54 holes being favorable for us. So the Challenge Tour was called for 54 holes. There, Wyndham Clark had won, a couple weeks ago prior to that at 54 as well. So Akesson is somebody who had missed the first cut and then Bennett stayed on, and it just caught the eye for me when I started to dig into him. So again, we were in South Africa last week. He is 35 years old, Tom, but he has a gap in his playing career as he gave it up after having a decent, I would say, amateur, I guess, maybe even a journeyman type of career from like 11 to I guess 16, 17. And then the gap comes with one event played in 2019, and then not again until 2021, where he played in the Nordic Golf League and had graduated into the Challenge Tour. 22 did not go well. And then 23, all he did was just rip it up on the Challenge Tour. 3 wins, another, I think, 7 top 5s on top of that. So Nordic, golf player of the year at 34 years old. And then he comes out and wins his second ever start on the Challenge Tour. I guess not second ever, but second of the year out of the bad side of the draw and 54-hole win. So, Tom, they did not get, I guess it was an anticlimactic finish, similar to Pebble Beach, where it was called after the fact that they couldn't play more. And maybe he's not out as much celebrating and he just is ready to go play on the DP World Tour versus, type of what could happen after a win after that stage. But if I looked at his Nordic Golf League, there was a win followed by a top 10, followed by another win 2 weeks later. Long-winded. I don't care. You can win back-to-back. 110-1 after doing that type of resume. Somebody would have caught my eye no matter if he had won last week or 2 weeks ago like Rivetto or whatever it was, that type of style. And I do think, even though you mentioned with Rivetto, his accuracy has been better, Aikison missed the cut on a more driver-heavy course, and last week didn't feel as much that way. There was a little bit more linksy type. So I love it at 110s. He's not priced everywhere, so that 110 is the best number I see at the moment. I'm hoping for a book with an each way to post it too, but if not, we'll do a separate top 5 bet, but 110 is the current best odds.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a player that I think whenever, we sort of say this semi-regularly, Sky, whenever a player is someone like wins 3 times in the Nordic Golf League, then goes and wins on the Challenge Tour for the first time, and kind of steps up, they can only beat what's in front of them, right? He's not a player that's played regularly on the DP World Tour. He's not had many opportunities. He's had big gaps in his career, as you mentioned. I think he turned professional, was definitely playing golf by the time he was 15. So, people that start early can take a long time to figure it out. And I think I love these things when people kind of come back to form and do it. I mean, Matthew Baldwin for a long time was a real journeyman golfer and then comes and wins this by 7 shots. Like, do I think Bjorn Exon's going to do that? I don't know. But all we know is that he won last week. We know that Rivetto won the week before, and we're going to ride with them and hope for the best. I mean, that's in a level of field where I think you can do that. I think if we were asking Ackerson or Rivetto to go into the Dubai Desert Classic and try and win it because they won on the Challenge last week, that would be different. But this is a SDC championship in South Africa that is not even the strongest field that they can put together in South Africa. I think it's the best time to take advantage of trying to catch one of these players while they're hot.
Yes, absolutely. I will give a shout out now before I go to my last selection for the DP World Tour audio listeners. If you find us, you can find us on all the different podcast platforms on Daily Fantasy Sports Picks and Bets, The Mix on Mayo Media Network. Awesome week for Pat, nailing Nap from us on vacation. His shirtless selections, man, that might be his new thing for him if he's going to rip off some winners. So shout out to Pat. But again, thank you guys all. You can find us on there, and we love all the ratings, reviews, subscribes, YouTube comments, people replying for us on victories or tailed us. That's a huge community win. So we love that when we have everybody behind us. So really appreciative to everybody out there. And Tom, I'm going to round it out for me with Robin Williams, a golfer that Brad Todd, our friend, is super high on. And Robin was, I believe, on a card to kick off the year. We talked about him in kind of the preview events in the fall, which didn't really go his way to start, missed the cut. And then at the South African Open, he did make the weekend 45th. At the Alfred Dunhill Championship, he had opened with a 65, which I believe was the first round lead. If not, just right there. Yeah, solo first round lead at the Alfred Dunhill Championship, 71, 72, 75 after there. But Williams then kind of caught again some form after 3rd and 11th his last 2 Challenge Tour events. He had won twice on the Sunshine Tour the previous year in 2023. And what we've seen from the limited statistics recently for him is, top 5 in greens and regulation the last 2 events for him. And accuracy seems to be a little bit better. It's not really his game as much as like a Van Velzen type, but if he's pounding greens at the rate in which he does, I just love the 150s on taking a shot. Somebody 22 years old. I believe he turned professional quite young. I think he was professional. It must have been 21. So I guess at the age of, 17, or I guess at the age of 19 for him. So I just think the sky seems to be the limit, especially if Brad's early on somebody. I like to jump in there too. So 150s for Robin Williams.
Yeah, Robin Williams was a player that I'm pretty sure we saw him featured on like Sky Sports at like 12 or 13 years of age. I'm pretty sure his parents called it, like, middle name's Tiger.
Tiger, yeah.
What kind of pressures you need put on you as a young child is to be called Robin Williams and then to have a middle name like Tiger as well. I mean, he's trying to live up to 2 heroes, I guess, in different fields. So, I think that, as I just said about the 2 other picks with Rovetto and Ackerson, you're taking a chance on a player that's got a high ceiling in a field where he's got a great chance to perform. I think it's low stress. It might not be low stress in the wind come Thursday, but it's low stress in terms of field strength and time of the year. It's not going to make or break your season. So if you find yourself in that kind of contention, you can take a shot at trying to win it, as opposed to you get to August, September, and you're trying to protect those kind of points, right? Like, I think like Sammy Vanamaki already went into kind of retreat mode by the time he got to like the 16th, 17th hole yesterday. He was like, I need to protect the second. And like that's already kicking in for him. But for these players on the DP World Tour, they should just be thinking, get in, get some points, have a go at, contending. And I think it's a great opportunity for someone like Robin Williams. And as you said, the stats suggest that he's hitting the ball really well. And that's the main thing coming into this week. So I think this SDC Championship, the thing that's blown me the most is kind of like, I just remember it thinking it was a driver heavy course last year, or driving distance heavy course last year. And now you do need to hit the driver, but you need to hit it accurately. It's kind of retraining myself into that. I think it's led to some different picks for me that I wasn't necessarily thinking about coming into the week. But I am happy with the process of getting to them in the end.
Yeah. Was there anybody down the board or that we haven't touched on that was close for you?
Ashen Wu was close. I thought he was someone that, when you talk about accuracy, there's a good time to get him. When I first looked at the list, I didn't see Tom Lewis on there, and then eventually he was. You remember I spoke about the fact that we're just waiting for Tom Lewis to actually play well for the first time ever. He was actually 8th going into the weekend and then finished 36th. So kind of almost glad, sorry Tom, that he fell away. If I was picking a Sunshine Tour player, it'd be Keenan Davids or Davidze, whatever that his name is there. But I don't necessarily believe that he can contend, so I didn't bother. The other ones I kind of thought about. One, definitely, if I pick Nacho Elvira and Manuel Elvira wins, I'm going to be pretty bummed. That's going to be pretty tough. So that would be one, I guess, I don't want to win at this stage. Jason Scrivener was kind of a name that was there. I think you look at that kind of area now, and you've got Jason Scrivener, Brandon Stone, I mentioned a couple of times in recent events. I thought was interesting. The other one name that I do normally like, Sky, especially maybe at South Africa, JC Ritchie.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever reason, he always kind of flashes up to me in South African events. I mean, it makes sense. He plays well in South Africa an awful lot. Didn't get there, but any others for you?
Well, I really wanted to bet Robson Chinhoy at 4,000 to 1 after saying, it was a travesty he's not in the Magical Kenya Open. Unfortunately, Robson has not shown much on his form. He did have like a 23rd randomly recently, or 24th, but for Robson, we're always rooting for him. I'm just trying to scroll through. It was nice to see. I'd always been like an Ivan Quintero Gutierrez fan. He played well last week in Kenya at a course that was super tight like that. Maybe it could carry over. No, I'm just more mad that we don't get Nicolo Galetti in this event. That's really James Nicholas was surprisingly accurate last week, so I'm hoping that could be something for him to play well. But
You mentioned Sam
No.
Jones to me when just before we came on about like he played well sort of for the first time after a bit of a patchy effort, and he was inside the top 15 for 3 rounds.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That was strong. I'm hoping Jones. So I guess like we did the preview and kind of guys to look on for next week. If you look at when you got on Hoshino's win and we were going driver heavy. Talk about driver heavy courses. It's next week. That's the one that Nick Bockham had won at. So if there's guys that tick a box in distance, they're starting to flash. This past week or even more recent than that, or beyond that. Be ready on Monday morning next week because that's where my card's going to be.
Yeah, and Backham was like 18th here last year, right before he won that event as well.
Yes.
So it's you can pretty much, if someone finishes inside the top 20 and they're let down a little bit by irons, but they hit it great off the tee or whatever, I think that's the formula to success. But look, I think there's been a little bit of kind of like bumbling around, maybe on my part more than anything in this this episode. And I think it's more just because I think it's just such a hard event to figure out. Like, I do really think this is potentially the biggest test of the year in terms of just trying to establish, like, next week, it's just let's go and find a big hitter and hope for the best. But the SDC Championship does seem to demand accuracy. It does seem to demand a little bit of kind of links now, so a little bit of South African form in the past. So you can draw the lines to it, but actually those lines are all over the place. So I'm excited for the event, apart from the fact it's not on TV. But other than that, I think it should be a good one, and I'm happy to leave it there in terms of picks and kind of predictions.
Yep, I agree. Totally in lockstep. So you can review your betting card, and then I'll do mine.
Yep, so Adrian Otaegui is now 35-1. There's been some updates since we've been talking here. Nacho Elvira is 50-1. Daniel Brown is best price now 66-1. And Rivetto, who was previously 125-1, is now 100-1. So obviously you've got to decide whether you're happy to take those numbers and slightly dropped off, but I'm happy with all four of those selections still at the prices.
Perfect. I am on Ryan Van Velzen. I'm going to go with the 50s with it 6-way each way with him. Ugo Kusad, 66 as well there with each way. Todd Clemens, I'm going to land on the 90 out to 6 places versus the 110-5. And then Bjorn Akesson and Matthias Schwab, both at 110-1. There's a vast difference in Schwab prices, so make sure you shop. I'm doing a separate top 5 for both those guys because I don't see Akesson in every single market yet. He's only priced up in a few. DraftKings has an 80, so I'm hoping some top 5s are nice, but even there's a 110 elsewhere too. And then Robin Williams is 150 with that 6-way each way too, 6 place each way as well. So that closes it out for the SDC Championship. Like I said, driver heavy next week, the following. So be ready for that. Hopefully a few guys that we're lurking on tick a few boxes and we can be in lockstep for that next week too. So Tom, how about 3 winners in a row? How's that sound?
I mean, that would be awesome. And especially it would be awesome if it was at the SDC Championship, because it would be the one where I was probably least confident of it happening. So, yep. I mean, I don't want to, put listeners off this. I think we, the formula's there. We've explained to you what happened last year, and you can obviously get plenty of that from there as well. I think Sky has, made wise selections and kind of, dived into it. I do. I think we're, I think we're trending really nicely. I think we've had a couple of even near misses as well as those, 2 wins in a row as well. So, especially with Valimaki, you could have had the double yesterday. That was pretty tough. I know this is not a PGA Tour show, but nice to see a DP World Tour guy that we kind of pointed out, being successful, especially after Matthew Pavon 3 or 4 weeks ago as well.
Yep. Amen. Let's go out. I love the South Africa swing, truthfully. So 2 big events. At the end of the year, we get that, and hopefully the form continues over for a bunch of them. So best of luck, Tom. Thank you guys, everybody, and we will catch you next week.
Thanks, guys.